Hey, Lee, look what I found on the hill.
My guess is it's an animal bone, and there just happened to be...
Some other animal shot it.
Yeah. Hi, Mom. I was thinking about coming down. I just need a break.
I'll do the taxes.
No, but see, and then do you see what happens?
I'm sorry.
And then...
Why isn't Daddy?
Sometimes mommies want daddies to pitch in, and if you don't, mommy comes after you and goes, rawr. So daddy is at home doing his homework.
Ain't shitty, baby, I'm hot like the
This is very strange.
We would start constructing.
Get ready. We are going to have a fun Saturday night.
I found this, and then I found that, man.
Well, let's keep digging.
We're gonna just sort of hang here.
I'm in.
Come on, it's gonna be fun.
I actually miss seeing you, man. It's crazy having a kid.
No sleep. No sleep. No sleep.
Also, there's a person.
I gotta sleep.
I'm just waiting to get my life back. When did it come back?
You're married? Mm-hmm. Since when?
It's a license plate.
Wow!
You know, there's garbage in
Phil,
the ground.
stop,
If
man.
you dig far enough, you'll find a landfill.
Wow! I'm really nervous right now, and I don't even know you.
That's very liberating.
Being in love, what is that? Getting what you want, or is it giving somebody what they want?
Do you not yourself right now?
I found something!
I feel like you're...
What do you think is going on here?
Ain't shitty, baby, I'm hot
But if you don't want to dig, how about some hookers?
No, that's a sort of illogical jump you just made.
Thanks, everybody.
Let's give it up for the warm-up guy.
He's amazing, right?
This room is on fire.
Matt Forte, unbelievable.
Well done.
The world's best hype guy. I don't know
I mean,
about
of
the
all
world's,
time.
but of all time.
Of all time.
Well, we talked a lot in the green room. We might not have much to go off of here, guys.
Hey, you said that wasn't gonna happen.
I know a lot of this came from your personal life, things that happened to you, right? Can you talk a little bit about that and how you brought that to Joe?
Yeah, so Joe and I had done Drinking Buddies together, and we realized we wanted to work on another project after that one.
Go on.
The guy who's heard this a million times I look at. And so after doing that, we wanted to do something together, and I had been digging in my backyard with my wife, and we were putting a little garden back there. I like to call it a farm. And we decided to go about 3 feet in the ground because that's kind of the thing to do. So as I was digging, I was looking around, and I found a rusted gun. Could have been a cap gun. I don't know for sure.
Don't say that at the beginning. Just keep the mystery going.
I found
He
a
found
gun.
a really scary-looking gun
A terrifying gun.
that was
Joe,
definitely real.
It could have been a cap gun. It could have been a cap gun. I found a bone that was about that big. I am going to say the marbles. I found license plates. I found a bunch of garbage. I found a bag of marbles.
I heard Jake tell that story, and I was like, okay, so what's relevant about the marbles?
Nothing. I found them, and I got really scared because it's a bag of marbles in the dirt.
It adds an even larger element of mystery to it. It's just creepy.
It was, in fact, too scary to put in this movie. A bag
Did
of
you fight
marbles.
for the marbles?
No, I was
That
so
makes sense.
terrified. No way. That would have just scared everybody too much. So I found all those things. I didn't know what to do, as I'm not an expert in that field. And so I did what I thought was the right move, and that is I called the Los Angeles Police Department. I told them I found a gun. I found bones. Oh, I found a plastic bag with bones that were chopped up. And I found license plate and garbage, and I thought they were going to freak out. And they didn't. They said, "What would you like us to do about it?" It's a true story. And I said, "Well, I don't know. You're the police. Maybe come and do an investigation and figure it out." And the lady goes, "Well, it sounds like you got a bunch of garbage in your backyard. And it's not our job to come and dig out somebody else's garbage. So if you find a body, then come and we'll get the body."
We don't go looking for
We don't
bodies.
go
We
looking
wait
for
for them
them.
to come to us.
Basically. And so I hung up. My wife and I had a talk, a lot like in the movie. But what was different is after, in real life, my wife said, like myself, let's go find a dead body. So I got a bunch of friends, we got shovels, and we went looking for a dead body, which we, maybe or maybe did not find. I'm not giving it away. And so I called Joe and I told him that idea, and we started talking, and we used that as the engine to start this process that eventually became Digging for Fire.
Now, Joe, where did the element of this character's life come in the sense that he's sort of like a blue-collar guy living in L.A., which is different from Jake. He's not an actor, and he's staying at, and is that your actual house that the film is shot?
No.
Oh, okay. He's staying at what could be an actor's house in L.A.
Well, in the movie, they are staying at an actor's house, but Rosemary DeWitt, who plays Jake's wife in the movie, is a yoga instructor. So they've been invited to stay at this actor's nice house while the actor, she says, like in Budapest shooting a movie or something like that. As a Chicagoan, I still live in Chicago. I was interested in making a movie shot and set in Los Angeles that's kind of an outsider's perspective of that city, and especially an outsider's perspective of wealth and fame and sort of stepping into that world, which is often going to LA, I'm like around money and I'm around famous people. It's never my money, it's never my fame. But it's a really cool way to see and experience that. And then I get to go home to Chicago to my normal life. And so I thought dramatizing that would be kind of interesting. And by having Jake's character play a public school like gym teacher, a kind of working class guy who, because his wife works with the rich and famous, is kind of invited into this world, I was interested in seeing like Jake's character's discomfort staying in that house, and kind of this feeling of like, it's fun, it's cool to have a swimming pool, it's neat to get to do all this stuff, but it's not mine. And I feel weird about that, but I'm not quite sure why.
And the way to deal with feeling weird is to sort of fuck it up by digging a hole in the backyard.
Exactly. It's totally
Dig as deep as you can.
self-sabotaging.
Yes, that's right.
But I'm curious. The taxes are on the table. There's this constant lingering pressure of finance on this couple, which we, like you said, we kind of rarely see about stories in LA. We generally see the problems of the famous or the problems of the well-off having marital trouble. Whereas this marital trouble, well, they may be having some of the same existential issues. They have the real financial issues as well. It adds to it. Was that something that you sort of felt would add to it or would be different than we normally see?
Well, yeah, to me, it's interesting because there's like some aspect to every movie I've made where I feel like it's a horror movie, even though none of them are horror movies. Like the horror of everyday life.
Well, yeah, the VHS.
Yeah,
bit.
I've done a few proper horror movies. But the tension, like playing around with like genre tension, but playing around with it in a way where the tension is coming out of the kind of like creeping pressure of being a parent, being in a long-term relationship, and kind of how this messes with both of these characters' identities. And am I still the person I used to be? So Sam Rockwell's character in this movie shows up out of Tim's past, and you get the sense that Tim used to be a little wilder and a little crazier, and he's kind of become a dad. He's sort of buttoned up a little bit. He's got a job, and he's a lot more straight-laced. And, the kind of, the arrival of these people from your past starts to mess with you and like, wait, am I still that person? Have I fundamentally changed? Is this new thing I'm doing just an act and I'm still that guy? And exploring that stuff was exciting to me.
Do you guys relate to that? As both of you are married, right? Yes. And you have a kid who's in the movie, right? Isn't
my son Jude plays their kid.
Right,
in the
and he
movie.
looks identical to you.
He does.
It's little Joe Swanberg who's walking around in the movie.
Here's the best part. Joe just had a daughter, and she is also little Joe Swanberg. She came out, we all saw photos, and we were all like, that's another Joe Swanberg.
Your son is really good in the movie too. Like I don't know what you're doing with him, but on cue, if everybody's improvising all the time, he is going right along with it.
I don't want to give away all my secrets. I do bribe him with gummy bears, which leads to good results. He has fun. He really is young enough to just be purely existing in these movies in a really cool way. And so the actors are kind of like polling actor moves around him, but he's just very present and kind of playing along.
There's a scene that kind of feels to me like what it's like working with Jude, because I've now been around Jude a lot, and he's really not like a little actor. He's just a boy. And I say that as a compliment because sometimes child actors are like these perfectly trained robots who know exactly how to do everything, but you look at them and they have shark eyes because they've like memorized everything they're supposed to memorize.
Terrifying.
Terrifying. Especially because I'll be like, homeboy, you're 6. Slow down. And Jude's a little boy. And so like at times in a scene we'll be talking and I'll be like, in the scene I was supposed to like ask him if he wants to get ice cream and I'll be like, you want some ice cream? And he'll look off camera at Joe and he'll be like, can I get ice cream, Daddy? And Joe will be like, you can, but we have to play make-believe for 1 more second.
Just please pretend Jake is your daddy for the next 45 seconds.
So say yes and then we'll get ice cream and he'll just go, before we call action again, he'll go, yes. Can we get ice cream, Daddy? But there was a scene that feels a lot like how we shoot these movies because there's no script, it's improvised. We have like a small outline, and each scene, a bunch of actors bring a lot to the table. And there was a scene where we're dealing with the taxes, and Joe saw the scene as about 45 seconds. I'm at one side, Jude's in the middle, Rosemary's on the other side. They wanted to shoot it in a oneer, so there was no edits. They'd blocked it out how everybody liked it, and all we're really doing is having dinner, and there's tension between husband and wife. Right before it starts, Joe whispers in my ear, right now, Jude thinks the word poopy is the funniest thing in the whole world. If you talk about taking a poo, this kid is going to die laughing. So I go, okay, yeah, great. And he goes, it'd be fun if you could get him laughing, talking about taking poops, whatever. Easy. He whispers in Rose's ear, this is a serious dinner, and you're tired of Tim slacking off. It's time that you guys got a little bit more serious, and don't let him be loose right here. But I didn't know that he had told Ro that, and she didn't know what I'd been told. So the scene starts, and I see this cute little boy, and I know he likes talking about poopy. So I go, hey, have you taken a poopy today? And I see him light up, and he's like, yeah. And I'm like, here we go. Let's get into it. And I don't remember what he was talking about. Something about like cats and dogs?
Yeah, cats and dogs pooping outside, which is another thing he's fascinated by, that you could poop or pee outside.
That's right. So he starts trying to explain to me that cats and dogs take poos outside. And I'm into it, and Rosemary goes, guys, that's enough. And it felt like really tense and off what I thought we were trying to do. So I thought like, oh, she doesn't know this is what Joe wants, but we're in a oneer, so I have to go fast. So I blew that off, and I go to Jude again, and I was like, did you take a poopy outside? And he wants to play and get into the game, but then he looks at Ro, and his lip trembles for a second, and there's this very real moment of like confusion and, 2 people who are not communicating and the results of it. And he cries for a second, and then we let him off screen, and we call cut, and there was this moment of tension, and Joe's wife was there to grab him, and everybody laughed, and he was eating ice cream in 2 minutes. But in that moment, it was like, oh, that's what this movie is. Yeah. Not everybody has all the information, but we know what we have to do, and we just have to react. And that's why I think Jude shines so much, because he has no other thoughts besides living in the moment.
He's incredible in that scene. It was actually stunning to watch him start crying.
Unbelievable.
I was like, how did they get this kid to do this? He's not a child actor, clearly. He's
Trauma.
yeah. A lot of therapy going forward, a lot of therapy. When you propose this to Joe, this idea of digging in the backyard, you come up with this gun and, of course, the marbles.
Thank you for saying the marbles. It's become the most relevant part of it for me that's not
You want the
movie.
poster to just be a bag of marbles digging for...
Hell yeah!
What were your thoughts as to what that hole would mean and what the story would be? Because the hole becomes much more metaphorical, and it becomes a sort of existential crisis about marriage and growing up and sort of just living in the universe and breathing in it. Were you thinking that way as well? Were you like, it'd be pretty cool, there's a gun, like what's in the hole, there's a mystery?
The evolution of an idea between Joe and I is it always starts on a very basic thing. We try to find a world that we want to live in and something we kind of want to do, and we'll go back and forth a lot. But we're always trying to find something we both want to dive into. So I hadn't thought of the whole metaphor. I mean, I knew there was something there, but at that point, it was not about kids. It was not about parenthood. It was an adventure. And it was a group of people taking a weird, small adventure. And we liked the idea of shooting it in a backyard. At one point, we were actually going to shoot in my backyard. After doing New Girl and Let's Be Cops, I wanted to make something small again where we could have the same intimate crew we had on Drinking Buddies and try to make something really special and really fun. But I didn't have all that. That was the collaboration. Then when I took that to Joe, we got to talking, and that's where the relationship started and the family started, and I think everything got more complex and deeper.
Let's sell this movie. There's a ton of famous people in this movie, and they're all great. They're all
Everybody
really
shines.
fantastic. Do you go over with them what they're going to say on camera before you start? I mean, I know they're bringing a lot to the table, and that's why a lot of people are so excited to work with you. How much of it is them? How much of it is you guiding them as to what to say? Because there are scenes, and we've talked about this before, where it does feel like it is coming out of Sam Elliott's heart. It's something that it's the way that he feels about marriage.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, I'm never putting words into their mouth. If we're having conversations, they're always based around what the scene means to me and why I think it's there in the movie. So I won't be saying like, okay, cool, you should say this, and then you walk over there, you say this. I'm more saying we put this scene here because it bridges this and this, and sort of like in terms of theme and tone, this is what I'm hoping the scene accomplishes. However we get there, though, is cool with me. Let's try it a couple different ways. And then the actors are kind of always playing and writing, and that's happening in the months leading up to shooting the movie. That's happening all during the movie, and then that's even happening in the editing, because with the improv, if we do 3 or 4 takes of a scene, all 3 or 4 could be different. And so it's like, which one feels right here? Do we switch these around?
Do some actors like send you stuff months before that they're thinking about doing on set?
Definitely. And that's happening also in a really casual way, just, via text message and email. Like, I'll get a text that's just like, hey, I had a thought. Like, I was talking to so-and-so, and I think this, like with Brie Larson, at some point she was like, what do you think about like putting some purple dye in the hair and then having that be something that can come out later after this has happened? Which is like a really cool visual idea and thought that's not, it's really different than just like, okay, cool, here are your lines, like I'll see you on set, come and perform them. It's like, I want you to be living in this world and really thinking about this. And so it's more fun for me too. I mean, it's like, either sitting by myself at a computer trying to solve these problems on paper, or having like 15 really smart, talented people all with our heads together coming up with solutions.
Do you ever have issues on set where someone doesn't know what to do or where to go, or they're struggling to get through a scene?
Yeah, well, I think that there's like different acting styles. I think that there's different storytelling styles. So I wouldn't call it an issue, but I feel like my job is to kind of read the temperature, make sure that those different styles find places where they can come together. And some of that, I mean, a lot of that is my job on set. Some of that is my job in the editing room. So if something is feeling off on set, I need to make sure that I do enough takes or get the pieces that I need so that I know how it's all going to marry together in the editing room. It's sometimes unproductive to say to somebody like, hey, listen, you need to do this differently, and more productive to let them keep doing it the way they're doing it, but to get enough of those options that the scene feels like it'll work to me.
What really helps these movies is that Joe's the editor. So he will know exactly what he needs. So if we're doing something, in the middle of a take, there'll be times where without a script and you're improvising, he'll stop and say like, guys, stop, we gotta go back in this direction because I know I'll never use that. So even though it is fun and it's working, tonally it's just off from how I see this scene. And because he's also the editor, there's not gonna be like 2 more conversations. If he sees a scene and we do it and he knows he really likes it, that's the scene that's gonna be in the movie.
Well, I'm very curious about the scene with Sam Elliott where he talks about basically his feelings, and it feels so real and something that he actually feels. And then the scene that I brought up with you earlier where you're telling the story about hanging out with these 2 kids and sort of finding your own mortality in those moments. Where do those scenes come from? And have you ever had an actor who's not willing to bring something about themselves like that you have to feed them something? Well, maybe your character would do this rather than having them give you something.
Yeah, well, it's coming from, there's a way that I like to shoot. I've worked with the same cinematographer on the last couple movies, Ben Richardson, and because of the improv, he and I are always talking about different ways to shoot and cover this stuff. And with Digging for Fire, we did a lot of letting a scene start and letting the actors get into something, and rather than backing that up and doing multiple takes of that, just letting that continue to go. So for instance, with Sam and Rosemary, the scene that you're talking about, we just let them talk for 10 straight minutes, and then the camera was just kind of quietly picking off different pieces of that, moving from left to right, moving from right to left. So we weren't like, okay, cool, we're moving from left to right 3 times, and then we're going to reset and move from right to left 3 times. we were just kind of doing our thing while they were doing their thing. And then what I'm looking for as a director and editor is that magic moment where their conversation lines up with the camera movement. All of that feels natural. And shooting that way, we arrive at that within that 10-minute time frame that they're talking, as opposed to that taking half a day of like resets and relighting, and now we're going to get over on this side, now we're going to cover it from here, and now we're going to do this. It's like, cool, why don't you guys live in that moment, like inhabit that space? For somebody like Sam Elliott, who's coming to this movie not really having done much improv, when I got on the phone with him to talk to him about the movie, he said, I got to be honest with you, I've never heard of you. I have no idea who you are. Like, that's who I'm working with, is like a legend who's like, listen, kid, I don't know who you are.
But he's kind of the greatest.
Yeah,
like,
he was amazing. But what's cool about him is he shows up on set, he's very smart, he's watching everything, and then he's like, oh, I get what you guys are up to. And so when I say, listen, I want you guys to have this relationship conversation, I would love it if you drew as much as you can from your real life. He goes, great. Here's what I think I would like to talk about. Sam's been married to his wife for, I don't know how long, 40 years or something like that. So he's bringing all this amazing knowledge. Rosemary, who's an amazing actress, is totally present in there. And they have an amazing 10-minute conversation. And then I know that for the movie, we need 1.5 of those minutes, and which ones kind of line up with the sun in the right place and all this kind of stuff. It's a really fun way to work. And for the actors, it's really cool because they, when I talk to somebody like Sam Elliott afterwards, it's like, great, I got to come be in a movie and I felt like I just got to like hang out with cool people and have fun conversations all day.
Well, it'll probably also feel intrinsically part of the process as well, rather than just sort of a model piece that's being moved around. One thing that we have to bring up, I feel kind of lame for bringing it up because it's in every piece that's written about the movie, is Chris Messina's penis is shown so briefly, yet everybody is covering this.
Don't do this while you're talking about it.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, it's just from this
Chris
point of view.
Messina, if you're watching this, that wasn't in reference to the size of it. It's perfectly fine size. I mean, it's great. It's a really great penis.
Stop, just
I
stop.
don't know where to go now. I don't know where to...
I mean, it's great. I loved it. I want it all over me. I don't want it all over me, but I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
I'm so happy they sent me a screening link. I could go back and forth. I could go.
I wouldn't pause on it, but if I would, who cares? What are we talking
I'm
about?
not into it, but I saw it and I couldn't.
Questions from the audience.
What is it crazy that people keep talking about this? That this is like the main point of interest for so many people in writing up this movie? I mean, movies all the time are insanely. It's kind of cliche, but movies are insanely violent, and women are naked all the time. And Chris Messina, it's not like he's even in a sexual act or doing anything. He's jumping
he's just
into
skinny
a pool.
dipping. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Do you want me to go off on a 25-minute tangent about like male nudity and
Love
like
it.
culture stuff?
Because you've done nudity before as well.
I have. My penis has also been in movies.
Your penis is also sorry.
Yeah, I mean, what's great about working this way and working with an actor like Chris is we're just trying to make the choices that are right for the movie. And, you know, Chris is an actor. I mean, he's a guy who's not on set making weird business decisions. He's playing a character and living in that role. And as a director, when I'm talking to him, I'm saying, your character is coming over to this house at this certain point in the night and taking it up a notch. You know, it's Sam Rockwell and Jake's buddy in the movie, Messina, the character he plays, who's like a club owner and a kind of wild dude. And so when I'm talking to Chris about it, and even while we're shooting it, I'm like, okay, this is your function, man. Like when Jake and I are sitting there talking about this story, this is why this character enters the movie, is to take the night into this more dangerous zone. And so it's Chris and Sam and Anna Kendrick are sort of hanging out by the pool. They're doing cocaine. It's kind of getting sexual in this kind of way. And so working with a guy like Chris is awesome because he's like, listen, I'm here for you. Like, I'm just going to live in it. You tell me when, you set the parameters, and then I'm just going to go for it. And that stuff happens and then makes it into the movie. And then I send Chris to the movie, and I'm like, all right, your penis is in there. And he's like, great, man. It works for the character. It works for the movie. Like, use it, which is cool. I love that guy.
You use the word danger, and so much a part of this movie is about the danger that your character kind of gets into and your wife gets into, which is the danger of possibly having an affair, of just being lured, and sort of being lured almost not by having an affair, but just by flirtation, feeling like you want to be wanted by someone new. Is that something that you guys relate to? Is that something that you experience? I mean, as an actor, as a television actor, I'm sure there are people who want to engage in flirtations with you on a regular basis.
What are you saying, sir? We're still on the penis stuff, aren't you?
Should we just go back to the penis thing?
Hell yeah.
It's a really good shot of the penis.
I mean, it's perfect. It's nearly perfect.
It's brief, but beautiful.
And he's a great-looking guy.
I mean, I had read about it, but I never expected...
I was on set. I was absolutely shocked in a great way. No, I think it's just in the movie Drinking Buddies we did was all about two people who, you're flirting and you're with somebody and maybe is the grass greener with somebody else. And we viewed this very loosely as a follow-up, not a sequel, but years later. And so years after you make your pick and you get married and you have a kid or you have your kids and everything is crazy and amazing and then the dust settles, we wanted to kind of start this movie at that moment. And for the characters, it could be somebody else. It could be the excitement of doing a project like looking for a dead body rather than worrying about your taxes or hanging out with old friends. But we just wanted that thing that tempts you, whatever it is, of the person you were before you were in this long relationship, to come lurking back this weekend.
A way to neglect the responsibility that you've chosen.
That you wanted, that you fought for.
Yeah.
Just to have like a weekend away to sometimes realize either you want to go further in that direction or you want to go further back home and you actually like the choices you made.
After doing a movie like Let's Be Cops and doing The New Girl for a number of years, is it just like refreshing for you to be able to do a movie like this?
Yeah, I love it. Well, it's not just a movie like this. I'm starting to only exclusively work with Joe Swanberg.
You guys have another movie?
We've already shot another one, yeah.
You've already shot another movie?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we just wrapped it like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. And it is refreshing because I think it is a slightly different take on the business, but it's movie making. And it's a really great way to get really talented people together and to tell stories and to make movies that you care about without all the different stages of notes and conversations with some people that really help the process and other people who just slow it down, where we realize we're in a world now of content where people can see things in a lot of different ways. And every movie doesn't have to be Let's Be Cops big or Let's Be Cops scope or reach that many people. You can reach different people of, different sizes. And so what's been really nice for us is to make movies with that in mind and just tell stories that we want to tell with the people we want to make them with and with the same crew we want to make them with. And it's a really attractive thing.
Are you affected by notes when you do, as an actor, when you do something as big as The New Girl or something like Let's Be Cops? Are you privy to notes like that? I would assume that as the actor, you're kind of, you're showing up and you're doing the acting.
Well, Joe said something great about Chris Messina, and Chris is an actor's actor, and it's something really great about him, and I agree. And I love that about Chris, that he's not doing weird business stuff.
He's a director, too.
Yes, and he's a super talented guy. But when he acts, he'll dive in. I'm not that way. I'm always kind of thinking about some weird business thing, too. I like that side of it. So if there are notes, I'm listening to them. And if the note is terrible, it really affects me. And if a story decision happens or is being made that I think is fundamentally wrong, it's harder for me to just open up and put myself in that character because I think we're going down the wrong road. But on a bigger machine, you don't have the control to stop it if you're just an actor. On a smaller process like this, you do because, Joe's a collaborator, and the people we get are collaborators, and we want people to come in and we want people to try to do their best work.
How big is the cast for the new movie that you guys just wrapped?
Pretty small, actually. I mean, it's interesting because I think in Jake and I's collaboration, where each thing that we make is kind of a reaction to the one before it. So I don't think you'll ever see us do two similar movies back to back. So if it's a small one, the next one will be like a big ensemble, and then back to a kind of intimate one. So we went in the opposite direction of Digging for Fire in terms of like a big sprawling cast and focused more on a few central characters. And, it's really fun. I mean, we're always kind of trying to learn and make adjustments and ultimately treat each movie the way it feels like it wants to be treated, if that makes sense. Like that there's no catch-all end goal, that like each project wants to be told in a different way. It wants to look a different way. It wants to have a different feeling in the soundtrack and the score. And so
I love the score of this movie, by the way.
Yeah,
the score of this
I
movie
do
is so
too.
good.
Yeah, Dan Romer, who did the score for Beasts of the Southern Wild, did this one, and
Excellent.
Really an amazing composer, man. He went above and beyond. I think it works really great.
Absolutely. I think we have some time for audience Q&A. Any questions about Chris Messina's penis? Because I can answer them.
because I could answer that.
Now I'm done. I'm done.
Okay, I don't want to talk about his penis, but I
Sit down then.
No,
And get the hell out of here.
I actually have a question. What was it like for you to star opposite Zoe Deschanel in The New Girl? And a follow-up question, what is like the funniest thing you have to comment on starring opposite her?
And follow up to that, what does her hair smell like? You know, I've worked with her now for 5 years. I find her uber talented. Like that whole cast. I think she's really funny. I think Max Greenfield is ridiculous and really funny. I think Lamorne Morris, who's now finally getting credit for being as funny as he is, was that funny to all of us, season 1, 2. And Damon and Hannah Simone. And it's a really great ensemble show because everybody can score and everybody's great. And so in terms of a funny moment, it's hard because we'll shoot 5 days a week, 12-hour days for one episode. So a lot of funny stuff happens, but you know, then they have to cut it into the show. So a lot of the funniest stuff for us is stuff that's like the in-between when somebody surprises you or does something you don't expect. But Zoe's she's really smart and she's really good. And her hair smells lovely.
We have any other questions? We have one right here in the front.
Hey, good afternoon. Congratulations on the new film. So my question is, you said there was some unscripted thing, some improv. Was there a scene, and this is directed to the both of you gentlemen, was there a particular scene that you guys were just laughing at so much that it took a while to get done, or was there a scene that was so difficult that it took a longer time than the rest?
Well, it's all the dialogue's improvised. So Jake and I worked on an outline, and then as the actors all came in, they kind of wrote with us or sort of, you know, I kind of, the movie splits off into two parts in a way. It's kind of like dual adventure films. So while Jake's character is looking for this body in the yard, Rosemary's character is kind of off on this, I don't know, like crazy, romantic, bizarre night with Orlando Bloom. And so there's kind of like two movies going on within the movie. So I ended up being the kind of central point of all these different ideas, like orchestrating the two stories and also all these actors coming in with these thoughts and feelings. But, you know, I mean, I have a lot of moments that are really, really funny to me, but I think with Jake and I, like the funniest stuff is when we can take a character he's playing and humiliate that guy in various ways. So all the stuff in this movie that makes me laugh the most are the times where his character thinks he's being really cool but is being really lame. And there's several of them because when Sam Rockwell's character comes back, Sam Rockwell's character actually is cool and Sam's really cool and has this whole vibe, and Jake is not like that at all. And so watching Jake follow Sam around and try and copy those moves is the stuff that makes me laugh the most. Trying to dress like him and just like act cool. Anybody trying to act cool who just can't do it.
We did. There's a bunch of stuff that makes Joe and I laugh that on this one we had to pull back because this isn't the kind of comedy about a huge goober. But we would do a lot of stuff in between takes that would really make us laugh and then have conversations where we'd have to be like, that's not this movie. This movie is not that.
That's a really hilarious idea. I can't put it in. It just wouldn't make any sense.
That's so interesting, though, to bring up, because not just in terms of the comedy, but there are places that this could have gone that would have taken it into a much less subtle direction, or even more sort of genre-fy it even more. When you're on set, do you ever feel tempted to do that, or do you have to make sure that you're pulling back? Because you could think to yourself, oh, this would please an even wider audience if I pushed it this way.
Yeah, I don't ever want... It's hard to start thinking that way. You're always guessing. Yeah. And so the decisions that we have to make on set always have to be based on what feels right to us there in the moment. And then the editing is for the options. You know, that's when you can kind of play a scene, see how it feels, maybe make it broader or more subtle based on how that stuff's going. But yeah, you just have to trust your gut. I mean, it's really the only thing that feels objective in the moment and not just like a totally wild blind guess. And then there's also this fun process of showing the movie to people. And so with something like Digging for Fire, there's several rounds as I'm cutting it. Jake's watching every single cut, but then I'm also inviting different people in to sort of look at it and give feedback. And in my experience, you always reach that point. Early on, you reach the point where you're really, truly solving problems. People are like, I am confused about this. And I'm like, great. So I'll use this other take, which seems to explain that better. And then you start to reach a point where you're not solving problems anymore. You're just, different people are different people, so they have different ideas. And it's usually when I reach that point that I think, okay, now the movie is as clear as it can be, and now it belongs to the audience. It's really up to, it has left my hands, and now it's time for people to just have the reaction they're going to have to it.
Do you have any more questions from people in the audience?
No, take it away.
Take it away?
Take it
to
away.
me? Okay, thanks. Oh, we do?
Sure. Yeah, hey guys, congratulations on all your successes. I loved Drinking Buddies, it was awesome.
Thank you.
And you mentioned that the premise of this is uniquely funny, fantastic. And you talk about the improv process. Joe, I was wondering, how did you happen upon that particular process of filmmaking? And do you see it more across the board? I mean, do you see more people coming on board with this kind of style of movie making?
Yeah, I think people are curious about it. I arrived at it via working with non-professional actors, coming out of film school and trying to find the process that felt right to me, and working with friends and feeling like, I mean, there were a couple different things. I've always felt uncomfortable putting words into people's mouth. You know, I remain under the belief that these are really smart, talented people who know the best way to say it, or at the very least, everybody should say it the way they would naturally say it, and then the movie's going to feel the best. So the dialogue was never important to me in the kind of structuring process of writing a movie. And now that I'm working with really talented actors who are really good at delivering scripted lines, what I'm finding is that the improv is creating this kind of space where, for instance, Jake and I can write an outline that does feel pretty structured and does kind of guide people through the movie, and I can sit down with an actor and pitch them the movie. I can say, here's what I think is going to happen all the way through. But when you enter here, I'm not sure what the vibe is going to be, and there's a lot of different ways that we can arrive at that. So why don't you spend some time thinking about it, and then we'll sort of touch base again, and you can tell me where you're coming, and then we can kind of put the movie together in that way. And I also think for actors, as increasingly the only options available at a certain level are comic book movies and sequels and reboots to things, everybody's getting really bored. I mean, I can't tell you how many meetings I have with really famous actors who are like,
Ooh, sorry.
And they are like, I'm like, so certainly you could do whatever you want. And they're like, I am so bored right now. Like, the last 20 scripts that I read put me to sleep. I don't want to do any of them. So I don't know what you're up to, but it definitely sounds more fun and interesting than this other thing I could go do. And so I think that's having a cumulative effect. And I think that there's other filmmakers, a lot of filmmakers who I came up with, who are now kind of entering the industry in a bigger way and kind of saying, you know, there are other and better ways to do this, and ultimately we're all trying to tell stories, but maybe we can arrive there in a more interesting fashion.
Jacob, did you ever approach any actor friends of yours or anybody to be in this, and they're like, I don't know, I don't think I could do that?
I don't think so, no. I feel everybody feels like, because it's not, you know, you're not asked to do everything. So things are blocked out. A lot of people go, I'm not sure what that process is, but then once it's kind of explained, Joe and I talk about it a lot, that especially on a movie like this, the first rehearsal is essentially the writing version. Then we do another one where that's the edits. And by the third take, now we know what the scene is, and then we just keep doing that until we've nailed it. So it's not every single take you do whatever you want. We just kind of find what the scene is as a group. And I feel like most actors feel pretty confident with that. Most actors are like, they can kind of improvise. Once you get into it, you can do scripted or improv.
And it's not hardcore comedy improv either. You know, it's not...
no one's being forced to come up with a punchline.
Yeah, it's not like a game
yeah.
of one-upsmanship where it's like, okay, you got to come in here gunning and deliver the funniest lines. It's actually more of a team sport where part of your job is to make the other people look good and remain present and listen and actually engage in a conversation. And when that's working at its best, it is funny, but it's funny in the way that like overhearing a natural, funny conversation would be funny, as opposed to like each guy's like hitting his own thing.
Well, everybody feels like they're on the same page in this movie, and it's great. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
Thanks so
thank
much
you.
for being here. How can people see the movie right now?
The movie opens today.
Yeah.
It's in theaters starting today, and then it goes up on iTunes and VOD on the 25th.
And we should also briefly mention you have another movie that's being released next week for people, and people were just here talking
Yeah,
about it,
I
right?
produced a film called Queen of Earth, directed by Alex Ross Perry, and Elizabeth Moss stars in it with Catherine Waterston. And it's a really cool, like, psychological thriller, almost like an
Two
old
movies
Roman
this week, and he
Polanski
just
movie.
wrapped one 3 weeks ago. Pretty prolific, guys. Guys, thanks so much for
Thank you
being
very
here.
much. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.